Act. So, first of all, I would like you to tell the audience a little bit about the Place of Worship Act. And I know he has said it's a draconian act. I agree it's a draconian act. You agree it's a draconian act. But it also has some exceptions. So, I would like to tell you to tell the audience a little bit about it.
So the thing is, the mosque that he refers to, where the Bindumata Mandir actually originally existed, is the Dorara Mosque. Okay. I represent the Kashi family both with respect to the Razia Mosque as well as the Bindumata Mandir. Basically, we're saying these are the original temples, so we want them back. Since the matter is still sub judice, nevertheless, since the other side is constantly talking about it, so it's fair game for me to talk about it. So, see, the point is very simple. This legislation was passed in September 1991.
Yeah.
With barely 3 days of so-called debate. And the BJP, which was in opposition then, is caught by surprise by the Congress because there was no advance notice that was given to the rest of the parliament that this was going to be tabled as part of the business for the day. So there was a procedural violation, which therefore they say there's a problem with which this is being taken. I mean, there's a problem in the manner in which this is being taken up. And then there are discussions barely for about 2 days where some kind of a response comes from the BJP saying, how can you actually undertake this exercise without even speaking with all affected communities across the country, where you find out how many people are actually laying a claim to these occupied sites so that we have a clear picture of what is the impact going to be of this legislation on existing litigation or existing claims. So it is just written roughshod into this. I think one of the columnists today, Sri Balbir Punj, he was the member of the parliament then who was vocally opposing this as part of the BJP's opposition actually. Now, my initial take for a very long time was that the legislation legally prohibits us from reclaiming our places. Around 2021, around the period that Vishnu had lodged his, or rather instituted his suit, I was terribly confused about the interpretation of two specific provisions of the Act, Section 3 and Section 4.3. As like the language is seriously problematic, it's not making sense. It's almost as if somebody has hoped that in the future somebody will notice this and pull a solution out of it, because it was done under Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao. Okay? Because he, 100%, because the man, apart from being a hardcore sadhaka, so to speak, was said to be in prayers when the disputed structure was being brought down.
Yes.
Okay? So he was doing a homa according to some people. Two, surely he wouldn't have come out with a legislation to bar. So it wasn't. So the public perception of the person and the legislation were at conflict with each other. So in typically what happens is when you're trying to reconstruct itihasa, the traditional approach is this. You know the general traits of Sri Ram. Okay, you know what he is bound to do, what he is not bound to do. Okay, if somebody provides you a certain instance which is going against every grain of what he stands for, you will immediately question the veracity of that interpretation, because you are allowed to fill in those gaps in a manner which is consistent with his overall character, not otherwise. So applying the same logic, if Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao was a proponent of this, how did he actually allow this? Now what happens is Section 4.3 or Section 4, there are two sections, I'm so sorry, the critical sections are 3, 4 and 5. 5 says that the Places of Worship Act shall not apply to the Ram Janmabhoomi dispute.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes you to another line of the argument, I'll come to that later. Which means no bar or no prohibition which is captured in this legislation shall affect the claim of the rival parties which are in litigation before the Allahabad High Court. That's point number 1. Now what 3 says is that the religious denominational character of a particular place of worship as it existed on 15th of August 1947 shall not change. Now, here's how a lawyer will look at it. Religious character is different from religious denominational character, because denomination is a subset. Religion is a superset. Okay? Therefore, if you say the denominational character shall not change, you're only saying Shaivat hai, Vaishnavat nahi banega, Vaishnavat hai, Shaivat nahi banega, baat khatam. That's where it stands. Correct, Shia. Therefore, the point is, does Section 3 apply to conversion from religion to religion as opposed to denomination to denomination is one question.
Okay.
Second is 4 says, देखो भाई, there will be so 3 is the bar, 4 is the status quo, which is जो वैसा है वैसे का वैसा रहेगा. 4.3 then goes on to say, If this happens to be a heritage structure or an archaeological structure, then the bar under all of the above provisions under section 4 under this section shall not apply.
No, it does not apply. Yeah.
Therefore, if you're able to establish that this is an archaeological structure which is defined under section 2 of the Archaeological Act of 1958, where it speaks of the Monuments Act and the remains also, archaeological remains, there are two separate definitions. One for archaeological monument and one for the remains. Both of them say 100 साल से पुराना है तो ये archaeological हो गया. So the lawyer in Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao decided that all our temples must be 100% over and above 100 years. Okay? Therefore he says, हिंदुओं थोड़ा दिमाग लगा लो, कभी तो चाणक्य नीति का उपयोग कर लो. So please, I'm giving you a gift from the past. Whenever you guys wake up, all you have to do is to undertake an ASI survey, establish that this is beyond 100 years. POW Act is not necessary, it is irrelevant to the conversation. Why is this crucial? Why is this crucial? I am proceeding on the basis, तुम Act को रखो या उठाओ, मुझे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. I have to be ready for plan B. Which is to say, the presence of the Act, if it is held constitutional, shall not come in the way of my reclamation thanks to the express provisions of the Act itself.
Okay.
That's point number 1. 2, if you choose to interpret it in a way that defeats my claim, that is when I have to say, now I will challenge this on grounds of unconstitutionality. तब तक मैं क्यों कहूँ that this stands in my way? रोड़ा है ही नहीं, आप क्यों बोलेंगे रोड़ा है? Why are you going on saying this? You don't have to say this. I only have to say, this is the express language. We will apply all principles of constitutional morality. Okay? Tell me how does this come in my way in terms of reclamation under the legislation. That's it. Okay? The moment you do this, you'll realize that the reference to the Archaeological Act is not actually a coincidence. There is a Venice Charter of 1964 that deals with how archaeological places are supposed to be maintained. You have government regulations. There's a national policy that was released, I think in 2015 or 2021, where we have come out with detailed policies of that. So, what is the meaning of a heritage site? What is the meaning of an archaeological structure is understood in law. It does not need to be interpreted again. Therefore, all we have to say is that ASI, and therefore there is no bar under the law. Which is why the other side constantly says, you first decide this question under the Places of Worship Act before you actually proceed with the ASI survey, because ASI survey हो गया तो दूध का दूध और पानी का पानी हो जाएगा.
But
they sought to defeat this excavation even in Allahabad High Court, by the way. There's a detailed judgment that the Allahabad High Court had to pronounce when there was such an opposition to the excavation. Because they said, mandir tha hi nahi. Then they said, agar hota bhi to humne nahi giraya. So they said, okay, why do we get into this nonsense? Let's just dig and find out. Then there was resistance because then archaeological evidence would establish that there are pillars with Vimanas, with the Amalakas, with the Garuda and everything that relates to Vishnu temple motif. Sorry, you're asking something.
yeah. So I was saying, even in 2022, when